What's the best case of instant karma you've witnessed? Two of my friends and I were playing Monopoly sometime around my freshman year of high school. One of my friends owned all the railroads, meaning any player who landed on a railroad would pay him $200. The entire game felt like I was just moving my token from railroad to railroad, paying my friend each time, having no opportunity to buy properties and getting super frustrated. In reality, it was probably only two or three times. On my next roll, I quickly calculated which space I was going to land on as I started to move my token, and lo and behold, I was going to land on another frickin' railroad. I gracefully slide, cheat past the railroad, and plop my piece on the next space. Chance. Chance card read something along the lines of, move token to nearest railroad, pay the owner twice the amount. I lost my crap. He tried to cheat Monopoly. Monopoly cheated him even harder. That's just how the game works, man. Story 2. Maybe not instant, but close enough. Working as a medic a long time ago and get called for a leg injury at a Friday night soccer game. We get there and determine it's most likely a torn ACL, painful, but basically any hospital can handle it and it's not really a priority. So we explain to the patient it will probably be faster and a lot cheaper if she just wants to have someone else drive her to the hospital that's literally around the block. Here comes a white knight into our story. This guy oozed friend zone, explained how he's a medical student going for his doctorate, and she needs to go to the local trauma center, which is a good 30-minute drive. We explain, no, we'll go to the local hospital and they can handle it. However, the patient pulls the nastiest look at us and says her friend knows more than my partner and I because he's actually studying medicine and we're just ambulance drivers. My partner and I give each other that look. An ACL tear isn't a priority for a trauma center, especially on a Friday night. Intoxicated driving crashes and wounds are going to be taken up the ER there. Well, we oblige the request with documented protest. The friend rides with us, we make him ride up front. He explains how the surgeon there is his friend and she'll get seen right away. We roll in and sure enough, there's about a dozen ambulance crews trying to unload patients in much worse cases than ours. We get to triage after about 15 minutes and the RSN tells us to put her in the waiting room and she starts crying. Cherry on top, she asks her friend to do something. He calls his buddy surgeon down. Turns out not his buddy, but one of his teachers who proceeds to yell at him about thinking that an ACL tear needs to come to a trauma center. She could have been in and out of the hospital in an hour if she had just listened to us. Story 3. A few years back, I was traveling on the interstate to meet some friends who attended a different college than I did for a weekend. On the way there, I'm in the right-hand lane, minding my own business, when a car tries to cut me off. No big deal, right? Except she ended up clipping my bumper and running me off the road with her driving speeds of around 80 to 85 miles per hour. Other driver keeps on going along her merry way while I'm on the shoulder attempting to contact the local police to report an accident. 5 minutes later, a state trooper pulls up behind me and asks what happened. I explain the situation, describe the other vehicle, included a partial license plate number, and he asked if my car was still drivable. After confirming that it was, he said, just follow me up to this next exit. I got a call about a driver who was out of gas and needs assistance. We pull up to the next exit just shy of a gas station, and sure enough, it was a girl who was the other party in my hit and run. She tried to deny anything occurred until the trooper looked at my front bumper damage and her back end damage, assessed the paint colors matched, etc. Bonus is that her plate had the partial information I had gathered as she sped away. Turns out the girl has no insurance and no license, gets hauled off to jail on a hit and run all because she couldn't slow herself down and be a decent driver. Story 4. During my lunch break at work a few years ago, I ran over to this convenience store that sold a few deli items and also had a lunch of the day special. And that day, it was spaghetti. I walked into the store and headed to the back to the coolers to grab a drink, and I started walking over to the line that was formed to grab lunch. This older woman, who was talking to a woman not even close to the line, saw me walking and literally strong-armed me to get in front of me. She was full-on shoulder-checking me. The cashier saw it, looked at me, and I just shook my head as if not to call her out on it. She gets 2 orders of spaghetti. They come in a styrofoam compartment tray. She walks towards the door and someone comes in that she knows, so she's going to say hi. I pay for my food and I'm out the door. As I'm walking to my truck, I hear a loud, oof. I turn around and this woman is planked on the ground with spaghetti and meat sauce all over her white shirt. Story 5. I just walked into a crowded bar with my friend back when we were in our early 20s. Make our way around the entrance handrails and bam, this dude smashes his shoulder into mine, knocking me back. Thinking it was just an accident caused by a crowded bar, I start to recover, and this dude throws his shoulder into me again. Before I can even begin to react to the second more aggressive hit, This monstrosity of a bouncer, watching the whole thing go down, picks the guy up and literally throws him out the exit doors. And it all happened in a matter of like 5 seconds. I don't think any other person in that bar, nor my friend, even saw it go down. Story 6. A few years ago, now, there were terrible gales of wind in my town. Like they would be pushing you down the street at times. At the place I worked at, there seemed to be a funnel effect due to the size of the building and narrow streets, which made the wind even stronger, to the point you could almost lean backwards as you walked, which you had to do to stop yourself from being pushed forward. Well, one time I came out of work, walked down the road in the strong winds to the corner where there was an adjacent road, and the wind picked up something crazy and practically fired me out around the corner. Unbeknownst to me, there was an old woman coming the other way who saw me just randomly fly out from around the corner and looked at me like I was a prize idiot just messing around. I looked back to see her reach this corner where the wind was still blowing strong, and it sent her flying out into the road. Luckily, nothing was coming at the time, but it was very much a, "Young man, don't act like that." She gets to the corner, wind blows. Ugh. Story 7. Playing a beer league slow-pitch softball game once, the backstop of this field was a big chain link fence half dome that extended out over home plate. The batter was mouthing off about how he was going to hit middle on purpose, hit the ball back at our pitcher trying to injure him, because he was mad that our team was steamrolling him. He proceeds to pop the first pitch straight up. The ball hits a metal pole on that half dome, comes straight back down and hits him in the top of his head, hard. He falls to the ground, pops back up, walks back to the dugout, puts all his stuff away, and leaves for the parking lot. We think he went and cried in his car. Story 8. A week ago, my husband was on a work trip and he got a free upgrade to first class. He got on the plane and sat down in 3A. A few minutes later, a woman boards and tells him in a tone, "Excuse me, you're in my seat." He takes out his ticket and shows it to her politely. She also has a ticket for 3A. She insists he needs to move because she paid for that seat and it's hers. A flight attendant gets involved and my husband says he'll move. He was very polite. So the flight attendant has him stand aside and says hopefully there will be another first class seat. They're about to close up the plane and the flight attendant welcomes them on their flight to Charlotte, and the woman in 3A goes, "Oh, crap. She got on the wrong flight. Idiot." My husband felt very smug watching her leave and enjoyed his 3A seat. Story 9. I was driving on the freeway one day and needed to get over. I checked to make sure it was clear, signaled, and changed lanes. I didn't realize there was an Escalade coming up behind at over 100 miles per hour in that lane. It was going so fast that the lane looked clear when I checked a second ago. The Escalade decided to teach me a lesson by acting like it wasn't going to stop and plow into me. There were now cars on both sides of me, so I couldn't swerve out of the way. So the Escalade screams up until the last possible second and then hits the brakes hard so he matches my speed about a foot away from my bumper. While this is happening, I'm freaking out and wobbling the car because I think I'm going to get creamed. The cop that was one lane over and 2 cars back immediately flipped on his lights and pulled them over. That was quite a roller coaster ride of emotions for me, though. Story 10. Driving in the slow lane, guy rushes up to my bumper and starts tailgating me, honked his horn and flashed his lights. When I didn't move, he went around me. Once he passed my car, so did a state trooper with his lights on. Another time, when driving to work, a car starts tailgating me but doing the speed up, slow down thing. I look in my rearview mirror and see a girl in the passenger seat yell at him. The car speeds up to my bumper one more time. I look in my rear view getting ready to flip him off. Then I see the girl absolutely witch slap the guy driving. He backed off and stopped tailgating me. Story 11. Worked at a convenience store several years ago. Check my other posts for a couple of funny stories. This was way back before gas pumps were all either card at the pump or prepay. It was about 7 a.m. and the morning rush was on. A suspicious fella pulled up to our farthest away pump and positioned his car so that it was not easily visible from the building. Now, this is a clear giveaway from someone who is going to drive off without paying. My manager and I watched this guy as we are ringing up other customers, and sure enough, when he fills up, he gets in the car and peels out, making a run for the road. He leaves our lot via a small access road that ends at a traffic intersection, red light. He stops for the light and decides he needs to get the heck out of Dodge and presses it again through the red light. When he does, he brakes his drive shaft and the car coasts to a stop right in the middle of the intersection. But wait, there's more. Guy walks back into the store and asks if he can use our phone because his car breaks down. My manager says, "Yeah, sure, after you pay for the gas you just stole." Guy gets all indignant. "I didn't steal no gas," getting more and more agitated and confrontational. And just then, 2 police officers walk in. Now, these are 2 lady cops, both in their late 50s, early 60s. that usually are stationed at the local high schools but always stop in for a coffee and a pastry. These ladies are the nicest people you'd ever meet, always with smiles on their faces. As soon as they turn the corner after entering, they see the guy getting into it with my manager. Their demeanor changed in an instant, going from kindly grandmother to I'm going to kick your teeth in microseconds. They manhandle this guy away from my manager, push him up against the wall, cuff him, and stuff him. You know how you always think to yourself, why is there never a cop around when you need one? Well, this time there was. Story 12. Overheard an admin at work boasting that she could easily skew the numbers on the tills to make it appear as though so-and-so's the till was short. Now, I'm not a snitch, but I'm also not going to let some kid get thrown under the bus because of some witch. The next day, I went to my boss to report it, but as I walked in, I saw the admin nearly in tears, claiming the boss stabbed her in the back. I don't know what she got booted for, but everyone agrees she deserved it. Admin wasn't fired, just moved to a crappy department where she's visibly stressed and drowning in the workload. A better punishment, I think. Story 13. This happened to me yesterday. There was this cute flamingo onesie pajamas that I had my eye on for weeks, but the only sizes available were extra small and small. They run small, so I needed an extra large one. I went to the store yesterday and this lady managed to find an extra large but was lamenting that it was too big and needed a large. I dug through the racks and found a large one and chased after her so I could give it to her. She was so happy. I walked away afterwards feeling sad that I couldn't find the onesie in my size, but then the lady came up to me, saying she was looking for me and gave me the extra large since now she had the large onesie she wanted. I couldn't believe it, so we said thank you to each other and went our way. The onesie is adorable and so warm. It was on sale too. Story 14. I was driving from Chicago to Wisconsin one weekend. As soon as I got on the highway, a car to my left decides he needs my lane this instant and pushes me out of my lane onto the shoulder. He continues to zoom around and almost hit another 10 cars or so just to get right back where he started. It was rush hour. We're all slowly going along the highway when I hear this boom. Turns out the schmuck's car busted a tire trying to drive along the shoulder of the road to pass another car. A couple of other cars and I stopped, not to ask if he needed to help, but to wait for the cop that was a couple miles back that saw the whole thing. We each gave our testimonies and the schmuck was taken away in the cop car for reckless driving and some other charges. Story 15. Long stretch of highway at night. I had actually gotten a ticket for speeding there a couple of months prior. It was a notorious speeding trap. Well, on this night, it was down to a single lane because of construction. Also means the speeding fines are increased. So it says 45 miles per hour, and that's what I'm doing. At some point, a big truck catches up to me and starts tailgating. Honks a few times, flashes his brights a few times, but I don't budge from the speed limit because, hey, I'm actually doing him a favor. So he never stops tailgating me for the rest of the one-lane experience. But eventually the other lane opens up, and as soon as it does, big old truck McCrap absolutely zooms around me, getting to at least 60 before he's even fully past me. There was a cop sitting at that exact location, and he got pulled over immediately. Story 16. I was driving down a remote highway road out in Buck Nowhere, Iowa. The road is known for extremely limited vehicle traffic, but a lot of deer. I was going right at the speed limit, extra aware of the deer risk, when a pickup came up right behind me and started tailgating. It was a no-pass area with lots of hills, so the other driver was smart enough not to force his way past me. But he was definitely angry, inching closer and closer to me. And that's when I saw the deer walk into the road about 100 yards ahead of me. I had enough warning to ease my speed down so I didn't hit the thing. That caused the tailgating driver to flip his lid. He served, honked, and flipped me off as he passed me. Then he hit the deer full on. His pickup was totaled. I did the right thing by calling 911 and sticking around to make sure the rescue services made it to help him out. The guy never looked at me once during our entire wait. Story 17. Was working, driving in the right lane on our way back to pick up a patient when a brand new Callaway 757 Corvette came flying around us. Apparently we weren't going fast enough, so the guy swerves around us, has the top down, wearing a fedora, then swerves back into the right lane and decided, in the last minute, he wants some Popeyes and attempts to turn into the parking lot. I think he watched too much Tokyo Drift and thought he could handle it. But the wheels locked and he went straight for some big boulder and a wall, completely wrecking this amazing car. There was a cop right at the Popeyes seeing the whole thing. The best part is the car had paper plates from that same day, literally probably had the car for less than an hour, considering it was barely 10 in the morning. Story 18. First day of school, starting first grade, and I was wearing my uniform for the first time. Everything fitted me, except my shoes that were bigger than they should. My mom was going to change them later that day, but I had to survive my first day without any incident. All was good until break when I decided it would be an excellent idea to play soccer for a while. Of course it happened. My shoe flew all the way across the yard and fell hard on somebody's head. I was mortified, but luckily nobody else seemed to be paying much attention to it, until a kid pointed at me and started laughing as loud as he could, screaming for everybody to see what had happened. Now people were staring, and I was about to start crying. But not even 5 seconds go by when another kid runs straight into the laughing kid, making him fall to the floor on top of his really dark chocolate milk. He was a mess, covered from head to toe in milk. And since people were already looking in his direction, everybody laughed at him. Nobody noticed me picking up my shoe and then running to the bathroom. Karma, a weird accident, I don't know, but everybody remembered Milk Boy that year. Story 19. I was waiting tables at a restaurant in Texas, and these three obnoxious women were complaining about a free appetizer they'd gotten, plus the drinks, etc. Just complaining on and on. I didn't bother discounting anything else for them because their complaints weren't really founded and they were rude. They stiffed me on the tip, and to add insult to injury, dumped what little was left in their drinks and salsa cups, chips, quests all over the table. It was a pretty big mess and would take several towels to soak up. Nice. I saw the mess and walked away, only to see one of them come back in, rush over the table, and pick up her phone. A phone she definitely did not have in a waterproof case. She wiped it on her pants, so I know it got all wet. I don't mind cleaning up after them so much after that. I just wish I had found the phone first. I would have made her pick it up to get it back. Story 20. About a year ago, I was visiting a tourist town in my state. A man playing guitar and singing was in the middle of the side street, pedestrian-only area, and was playing really well. He had a hat with plenty of ones, fives, and $10 USD notes. I sat down and enjoyed his music while waiting for my mother to come out of the shop she was in. My mom came out and it was time to go, so I politely tipped the man for his service. And it just so happened to be my last $2. I, 28 female at the time, had recently moved to the state and had nothing but my clothes on my back after leaving a bad situation. As my mother and I rounded the corner to a back alley shortcut to our vehicle, I saw a piece of paper on the ground. I picked it up and it was a $20 note. Absolutely no one was around for me to find the person who may have dropped it. Had that been the case, I would have honestly inquired. I put the bill in my pocket and proceeded to the car. Once my mother and I returned to her house, I pulled the bill out of my pocket and unfolded it. To my surprise, it was two $20 bills stuck together. Karma? I should think so. Story 21. There's an intersection in the town where my daughters live where two major routes, US 9 and NY 146, meet. Going northbound, there are 2 lanes that go straight or right and 2 that turn left. I was taking them to see their grandparents one weekend. I was in the right-hand left turn lane about 3 cars from the front. Ahead of me, right at the front of the left-hand straight lane, was a taxi van, plates, logos, and all with his left blinker on. Watch, girls, I said, he's going to make a left-hand turn. Light turned green. He did indeed start his left turn in front of an entire lane of traffic that was legally making the same turn. And the sheriff right in front of us is going to pull him over. As if on cue, the flashers come on and he's behind the van in a blink. And if you're learning a thing or two from these stories so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 22. I saw these 2 bicycle cops randomly come over and pester an obvious homeless person who, I might add, wasn't begging or in anyone's way, just sitting in the sun, minding his own business. They were really giving him a hard time to the point where I almost walked over to ask what was going on. I'm not sure if they realized that there were people watching and giving them dirty looks or realized he wasn't causing any trouble, but they decided to back off. But when they decided to leave, the one cop got back on his bike and must have misstepped and went right over the top of his handlebars and landed face first in the pavement. He was fine, but it was hilarious as heck. And of course, the homeless person asked if he was all right. Story 23. I was walking my dog recently when some guy walked up to us. He was wearing a big coat with a furry collar, big dark shades, and like a fedora type thing. So it was like a really bad outfit. Anyway, this outfit is bulky and weird and hides the dude's eyes, so my dog was already a little on edge just regarding this guy carefully, without making a fuss because he is a good boy. And then this guy starts barking at my dog, and this freaks my dog right out and gets him barking at the stranger. Now, my dog is an 85-pound German Shepherd, so despite him being a very good boy who had done no wrong but be needlessly antagonized, I'm still concerned with something bad happening for which my dog might be liable. So I take my dog aside and try to soothe him, and he's starting to calm down by the time this guy walks by. The moment this guy walks past us, he slips on a patch of black ice and lands flat on his back. We're talking flat as a board, head, shoulders, everything hitting the concrete at the same time. Nothing broke this dude's fall in the slightest. He didn't seem too fazed by it because it seemed like he was on something, but it was still pretty satisfying to watch. I didn't bother to say anything and resumed walking my pupper. Story 24. The best case of karmic justice I've ever been made aware of and affected me personally was the instant I found out someone passed away. This person mistreated me verbally, emotionally, and a little physically for years. They were cruel to others as well, including their mother, even when their mother was over 80 and frail and needed help. This person mocked them for being slow and displaying all the signs of dementia. Additionally, this person lied to the police about a confrontation and altercation, and the police believed I was the aggressor, when I was just trying to avoid being hit and not allow them to hit their mother while this person yelled and threatened. This person had a lengthy history of substance abuse. Substance is what ended them. Smoked it, stood up, and had a heart attack, passed away before they hit the ground, or so I was told. The karma was so thick I could cut it. The justice was so sweet I could taste it. The relief was so tangible I stopped having nightmares of this person ending me. Story 25. That'd have to be me witnessing it with my dad. He's wiring in a fridge and it doesn't have a fuse, so he puts a fuse in which might be too low in amps. He isn't sure what it is supposed to have in it, a fuse which predictably blows and trips the breaker. So he grabs a piece of wire and uses that. Keep in mind that at this particular time I just passed an electronics and computing course, so I say to him, if that wasn't because the amperage was too low on the fuse and instead the fuse was right but something in the fridge is broken, instead of blowing a fuse, it'll blow up the fridge instead because that wire won't melt like a fuse would. Nah, he says, followed by those iconic words, I know what I'm doing. I argue with him, pointing out there's a reasonable chance this thing will just blow if you turn it on. Check what fuse it was supposed to have and get one of those. He's adamant, this'll be fine, he says. I know what I'm doing. The circuit breaker isn't too far away from the kitchen. I can see in through the door which the fridge is by if I look down the hallway. Switch it all back on, he says. I saw the puff of smoke and flash of light from where I was standing, along with the sizable bang that came from the bottom of the fridge. Story 26. At work the other day, serving tables, I had a couple where the gentleman was very conversational and tried to have some fun while I was at the table helping them. Meanwhile, the lady wants to buy a wine and glass from us, which we happily sell by request. Lady then asks for a discount because she works for the property the restaurant is on. I politely let her know that, unfortunately, our wine glasses are excluded from discounts, and she decided to complain to me that we don't give her enough discounts for working the property. Lunch went on, and the gentleman continued his happy-go-lucky ways while this lady scolded me the rest of the time for not giving her a discount. The check comes, and the gentleman thanks me for great service and then gets up to go to the restroom. Lady decided she wanted to fix the check and left me with a 3% tip. That really expensive scarf thing you left at your table that you're telling the host you swear you forgot there? Guess I must have missed it or something. Story 27. I'm from Denmark, and I used to ride the bus 50-ish minutes every day to get to and from work. One day, two people got on the bus a few stops after me, a rather large woman and a smaller man, both of them Greenlanders, which becomes relevant later. I'm not sure what their relationship was, may have been mother and son, may have been a couple, or something else. As mentioned, the woman is rather large, so she can't quite fit in the regular seats, which honestly is fair. There's not much leg space in our buses. So instead, she sits in the middle portion of the bus where there are a few seats that are actually usually reserved for people with disabilities. After a few minutes of driving, she, for some reason, just kind of starts shouting, not sure why or what, and the man with her doesn't really do anything about it. I just turn the volume of my music up a bit and ignore it. As we get closer to the city and more people enter the bus, she starts bothering a lot of the people close to her, even going as far as shouting at a girl who was exiting the bus. Again, not sure exactly what she was shouting. Finally, this older lady walks up to her and asks her firmly but politely to please keep her voice down. Upon hearing this, she just kind of flips out and screams something along the lines of, "Is it just because I'm from Greenland, you freaking prejudiced?" So the older lady just kind of backs off. And at this point, no one really wants to do anything about the shouting woman on the bus, and the mood is a bit tense in the bus. A few more minutes pass as people enter and exit the bus, shouting lady still doing her thing. But then a ticket inspector enters the bus. He goes down the aisle between the seats and checks the tickets, and when he gets to her, it turns out that she has no ticket. She and the man with her are then asked to leave the bus with the ticket inspector and surely had to pay a fine for that. Of course, I have no idea what was going on and why she was shouting, but she was bothering so many people that it was so satisfying to watch her at least having to pay a fine for not purchasing a ticket. Story 28. I, 24F, was using one of my boyfriend's 26M spare laptops to look at a recipe while preparing food. He went off on me because he assumed I'd get food on the keyboard, but I was just using the screen to look at it. He said something like, "I'm going to be angry if you mess up the keyboard." I turned towards him and told him to chill the heck out and turn back around. He threw a lighter at me, missed, and hit the laptop screen, shattering it completely. I laughed so hard and his face turned purple in frustration that it ended up being him that messed it up. We're still together. Everyone has moments where they should have handled it differently. It makes him human, not a monster. And he's made huge amounts of progress with his quick temper. We have a family now, and I could not be prouder of where we are and who he is. So please stop bashing him because of a moment we both laugh about now. Story 29. This still makes me smile, something I've posted before, maybe from an old account. When I was in university, I took the bus to and from school every day, about an hour each way. The bus terminal for our suburb was at the end of my street through a path and on top of a big hill down, which you had to drive with all the other traffic to get into the city. I get on the bus rolls up to the red light to wait for the green to pull out onto the main road. Light turns green, bus starts to pull out, and suddenly the driver slams on the brakes, everyone lurches forward hard, and the driver lays on the horn. As I look up, I see this big-ass silver Cadillac blasting through the red light. What's worse, the woman driving was this dyed blonde-hair, prissy 60s woman in a red power suit who simply flips the driver off without even looking and barrels down the hill. The bus driver screams at her out loud, and, well, we carry on. Now, at the bottom of this hill, the police often set up speed traps because they can catch people coming out of a curve on the road on the hill. People tend to go way over the limit in morning rush hour. Guess who gets caught? The bus driver pulls the bus over by the speed trap and beckons a police officer who comes into the entry part of the bus. The bus driver says, "Is it still illegal to run red lights in this province?" To which the cop replies, "Sure is. Did she?" Bus driver, "Oh yeah." The cop hands her his card and says, "Well, here's my card. Get in touch, and if you're willing to come into court and testify, we can tack that on as well." And the bus driver says, "Honey, I get paid to go to court. I'll see you there." And no joke, the whole bus erupted in applause. We could have driven over an IED on the way to school that day, and I still would have called it a good day. Story 30. In 1988, when I was 8 and my brother was 10, we were flying from Florida to Arizona for the holidays by ourselves. Because we were kids flying solo, we were sat first on the plane. My bro and I are seated in the middle and window seats. A man in his 70s or so comes down the aisle and sits down in the aisle seat in our row. He hems and haws for a moment and starts aggressively pushing the stewardess call button. The stewardess comes over and he proceeds to go into a rant about how he paid good money for his seat and doesn't want to sit next to children. The stewardess asks him if we've bothered him and he says no. She tries to accommodate him by finding him another seat. He flat out refuses to move because, again, he paid good money for this seat. The stewardess says, "No problem, sir. It's a packed plane, holidays." So she says, "Guess what, kids? You're moving to first class." The old guy starts saying, "Well, I'll move to first class. That's not a problem." The stewardess promptly says, No, sir. You paid good money for this seat. You can stay right here." And we moved to first class, and it was tubular. Story 31. Driving on a snowy freeway in Michigan, and all the cars are going about 35 miles per hour because the plows haven't been through recently and we had a massive storm. The right and middle lanes are in okay condition because they've had a lot of cars on them, but the left lane is still very snowy. Even the lane line markers have little snow berms, which makes changing lanes dangerous. I see an Audi sedan tailgating people and trying to speed by without having to go into the far left passing lane. Eventually, they bully enough people into changing lanes and speed off. I passed them on the off-ramp about 5 minutes later. Now, the ramp had a somewhat sharp curve to the left, and they must have all still been going pretty fast when they hit it because their car was stuck in the snow 10 feet off the road. The car was angled slightly nose down with the back wheels above the snow by a foot, and it appeared they'd gotten at least a little airtime. There were two guys standing waist deep in snow on either side of the car, screaming at each other and looking like they were about to get into a fight. Story 32. This is sort of indirect karma, but when I was 14 or 15, I was working at my mom's store and always rode my bike there, and I parked it behind the store in the alley. After finishing work for the day, I saw that my bike was stolen. The store was next to a bar, so I assumed some schmuck stole it. The next day, I come to work and see two $20 bills next to a small bush in the alley. I went to pick them up, and there were two more $20 bills stuck in the bush. Sweet, I just found $80. I asked my mom if I could put the money I found, as well as some of my paycheck, towards driver's training if she will pay the rest. So I got enrolled, then sometime later the police found my bike. It was parked right in front of the bar that is next to my mom's store. Story 33. I often bring junk cars to a scrap processing yard, and I did one of the workers there a favor, and I sold him a good running car for very cheap. He didn't have the extra $200 to pay, so I told him it was okay and to get it to me another day. Well, he went to ask his boss for an advance on his check to pay me sooner than later. He gets by paycheck to paycheck. Well, his boss wasn't having it for some reason and instantly went off on him and completely humiliated him in front of everyone when he was only trying to do right by me and my business. About 10 minutes later, a huge tractor trailer misinterpreted the turn onto the scale and took out his boss's car, completely tearing through the metal of his car from front to back, damaging his doors, fenders, and mirrors and windows, finally ripping his front bumper off completely. The worker I sold the car to right after says, "What a shame, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy." You can see the blood boiling in his boss's face. Story 34. My ex cheated on me, and as soon as I left her, told her mother since I already blocked her, her epilepsy got worse. We're talking multiple times a day, plus micro seizures. She's also locked in a relationship with a disabled bloke twice her age because she alienated all of her friends. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it was a curious serendipity. It's not the worst thing she did, and she's obviously sick mentally as well as being epileptic. I hope she would get better and maybe become a less toxic person, and I suppose still do. Though I don't feel anything for her, be it anger, longing, love, hate, fear, because honestly, she's not worth it, especially for me. Like everyone, she deserves to recover and live a happy life. I just hope it's not at the expense of someone else's. Story 35. My time to shine. So my buddy and I were kayaking right off the beach on a windy day, just riding the waves and such, nothing serious. We decided to go south towards an island and we had to pass a jetty of about 100 yards. While doing so, we're fighting the current pulling us into the rocks while remaining parallel to the shore. A big 30-foot-something boat comes speeding towards us from the opposite direction, maybe 20 feet away, and we begin waving our hands down so their wake doesn't carry us into the rocks and cause injury. They, at least 12 people, barrel right by us, laughing at us, struggling in their wake, and 2 seconds later we hear the sound of the engine with no resistance, almost higher pitched. We look and saw they hit a big wave and went airborne and slammed so hard everyone fell on the deck. I was in awe. My buddy, however, without hesitating, put his paddle down, pointed at them, and laughed like this. Ha 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 ha. Immediately after, we hear a woman's voice fade away saying, "It's not funny." I bet these 12 people suddenly stopped laughing and started searching for their missing teeth. Ha! Story 36. Reposting my own story, driving through central Nevada on a 2-lane highway leaving B80. I was taking a sweeping right-hand turn when a newish Camaro with a very distinctive set of stickers on the rear window passed on the left after crossing a double yellow line, and 1. Nearly was involved in a head-on collision with a semi coming the opposite direction, and 2. Nearly collided with the front of my car when he swerved back into my lane. In that part of Nevada, the towns are roughly 60 miles apart. The next town is Goldfield, a notorious speed trap. About 5 miles outside, south of Goldfield, lo and behold, the Camaros pulled over. Thank you, NHP. About a half mile after I passed them, the NHP officer was apparently done giving them their speeding ticket. Camaro was clearly mad, and once he was far enough away, he really took off. And in about 5 miles, made up at least half or 3/4 of a mile, and I was doing about 80. Again, he crossed the double yellow line and passed me on a blind corner. When he passed me and was swerving to avoid another high-speed head-on collision for another illegal pass, he apparently missed the fact that the speed limit dropped from 75 to 25 in about a quarter mile. County cop was sitting just past the 25-mile-per-hour sign with a radar gun and nailed him going at least 80 in a 25. Story 37. My mother used to take me for walks near a large ravine close to our house. During one of these walks, she spotted 2 teenagers on bikes trying to ride down the ravine hill. My mom became concerned because the hill was far too steep to bike all the way down, and these teens were taking increasingly dangerous risks. So my mom calmly and politely advised them not to go all the way down. They told her to screw off back to China. My mom simply said, "Okay, bye, good luck." As we were leaving, we turned to see these idiots attempt their big ride. The first teen went down at a maximum speed, hit the second part of the slope, and lost control. He and his bike were basically cartwheeling all the way down. My mother and I rushed down the hill and found him at the bottom. Here's the karma part. My mom is trained in emergency triage and had a cell phone, the old brick kind. So guess who ended up keeping this kid and directing paramedics to our location? Yep, his friend. My favorite part was when she used her belt as a tourniquet on his leg and said, "I'm from the Philippines, plenty of steep mountains and hills there too." Story 38. I encountered a lot of schmucks in my delivery driving job, but this was one of the most recent. In downtown Gainesville, Florida, there are a pack of cyclists that are just complete A-bummers. Anyone who has driven down there knows who I'm talking about. They have lights on their wheels and constantly jackknife in and out of traffic, and generally just be total idiots with their bikes. They'll get as close as they can to your bumper and do wheelies. They'll swerve in and out of lanes and cut in front of cars. It's a disaster waiting to happen. One day, I look in my rear view and I see flashing lights. One of them is popping a wheelie about 5 feet from the back of my car, trying to touch the back of my hatchback while his friends cheer and whoop. I tap my brakes a bit and my car slows. I see his wheel wobble and he hits the freaking concrete. His friends stop to help him and are flipping me off and screaming at me. Looked like he ate the ground pretty hard. Not the biggest story in the world, but it made me smile when I did it. Maybe they'll stop being schmucks as a result, but I doubt it. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.